Good evening, Scallywags. Welcome back. Robert here in the fish hole. We're going to talk about some of my favorite things to feed today, which are live foods, specifically live blackworms. Now, I've been growing live blackworms in my two pleco tanks here for the past year and a half. I put some in there one time hoping that the plecos might eat some of them. There was some live bears in here at one point in time as well, some guppies. Since then, I moved on, but the blackworms survived. So I've actually got two different colonies, one in each one of these 20 longs, and I've been harvesting blackworms out of here weekly, regularly, and feeding all the babies, all the live bears that we've got, anything that I can do to feed and help trigger some spawning with some of the species we have. Plus, it's just really fun to feed live foods because of the interaction that the fish get out of it from hunting those live foods. So today we're going to be talking about what I'm doing with these tanks as far as the live blackworms in there, how I harvest them out of these regular tanks. And then I've also set up an experiment where I'm going to try to just have a dedicated section for live blackworms to make it a lot easier for me to harvest them so that we can harvest them a little bit more regularly and a little more timely manner. Because right now it takes me a little bit, which I don't mind. It's kind of fun to do because it's a little tedious and you get these little ball of worms and it's just a lot of fun. And then you get to feed. I like to use pipettes to feed them. I will use a turkey baster for some of the, when I feed larger amounts to some of those species or those tanks. So let's get started. What I've got here is just a bucket and a net. I pulled live blackworms out of the L144A tank earlier today. So we're going to pull some blackworms out of the long fin green dragon tank. About this time, I'll try to roll some B-roll footage where I've got some footage of the live blackworms in the tank. Clearly, there's a lot of snails in here right now. So what I'm going to do is I've got my handy flashlight here. I'm going to kind of peek and look. Where do I want to get a scoop of worms from? This net I'm using, I'll show you in a second, is super fine. Like it grabs everything, which in this case helps out a whole lot because we want all those worms. Right now, since I'm messing with them, they've all kind of sunken down in the ground. I'm going to stab my net into the ground and scoop up just a big net full of gravel. Now, when I do this, it will release a boatload of them into the tank. They kind of get moved around, so I will try to net a few of those. It seems like I'm getting caught on. Yep, no problem. So, got my loot here in the net. I'm going to dump it out in my bucket. This is the net. It's super fine. Got this at our local shop, I believe. I'm not sure. But it doesn't let a whole lot of stuff through. The stuff that it does let through is super tiny stuff. And there usually is a boatload of worms still attached to it. And I'll just let it sit in one of the tanks so that the worms that are in the net will make their way down to the water and they'll feed whatever tank I'm setting it in. So these are baby pleco, or excuse me, these are baby cichlids. So there's some fry up here in the top that are probably big enough to eat them. We'll see. If not, they'll go down in the cars. We'll eat them. This is our bucket. This is about how much I will scoop out of the tank when I go to feed. I will take this into the kitchen, which is where we're about to go, and run some water into it and sort it around. So let's go. We'll be back. Okay, welcome back, guys. We're in the kitchen. Got my worms, my bucket. What I like to do at this point is use fresh RO water. And I like to just put a little bit in there, not a whole lot. Now there's probably a quarter of an inch of water, not a lot, just enough to barely cover the bottom. And if we look, it is covered in live blackworms. We see all those little red worms everywhere down there. So, little bulb sucker turkey baster. This one's giving me problems. It's not making the greatest seal, but just got a little bit of water in there. And I already can tell that the worms are already balling up into little clumps. I give it just a second to settle. Maybe encourage them to migrate together. So as I'm going, if my cup gets too full, I'll just take the baster and to the bottom and try to avoid getting any of the worms I've already picked up. And shoot that water back in my bucket. There. And so that's probably like a dime-sized ball of live blackworms. Probably more than 50 in there. I'm not going to count them. You can count them. Let me know in the comments how many you think is in that little cup so far. All right, a little fresh water. Again, not a lot. I want to keep my water level low in this so I can keep the worms kind of moving and I can see if I'm still working towards a good goal here or not. We're painting for gold. Live foods, that is. And so I want to keep my gravel. Not so worried about the water. One more little water in here. Last of that sand. Okay. That I will go dump back in the fish tank, kind of in the spot where I scooped it. What we're left with is this little bit of liquid gold in here. It's very murky and very yucky. So what I'll do, I'll just kind of sit here and slowly pour out the muck. And I'll add some more water. Stir them up a little bit. As they stir up, pour out all the muck. Now I'm pouring this into that bucket just in case I happen to slip, spill my whole pile. It's not in the sink. I'm not having a loss. Most of them that time. See, I just lost a whole bunch that time. Now, these guys won't foul your tanks again or anything like that. You can let them grow in your tank. You can keep them in the fridge in a shallow container. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with them. If you keep them with fresh water, they'll survive for you. I've read that they'll survive for weeks at a time. I don't really worry about that because, again, I keep them in two of my tanks specifically. I really try to keep those tanks clean because they do so good with these worms. So in here, you can see, this will focus, nice sized ball of live blackworms. Those are yummy. So you can take this. So you could take this and you could just go and dump it straight in your tank. You could use a pipette like this to stir them up, get a few out there. They're fun because they do ball up really good in the cup. But once you've got a few in your pipette though, you can go around and drop that into your tank. Alternatively, if you've got one of these little cone things, these are usually designed for frozen food. They're fun to drop frozen cubes of bloodworms in here and watch the angels and some of the other species pick at it. But you can also do that with this. And what the worms will do is they'll ball up in the bottom. The fish can come pick at this while it's in the tank. And it gives them a whole controlled area where the worms are in one spot. They can focus all their energy there, but they get the interaction of picking at a live food. I don't even know where we got this. You can find it elsewhere, anywhere online, I'm sure, but it's fun to use. It's late already tonight, so I'm not going to go actually feed any of my fish. I did that earlier today. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take this and add it to the experiment I've got where I've got a shallow tray on top of the 125 here in the blue room. And in that shallow tray, I've gotten the largest white gravel ball I could find that I thought would be easy to run a bulb syringe through, or a turkey baster. My goal is to be able to, when it's time to harvest some live blackworms, run this through these little valleys in this tray, pushing the gravel out of the way, but able to suck up live blackworms along the way without having to harvest them the way we just did tonight. Now, I just set that up, I think maybe a week ago. It might be almost 2 weeks. The worms are doing great. They're growing. It takes them a little time to colonize and actually expand. The way worms reproduce, they can actually be split in half, and each half will grow a new end. If you cut it in half, the tail end will grow a new head and the head will grow a new end. So you can actually multiply them that way. I'm not going to do anything crazy like that. You could run them through a blender, I suppose, or something silly. Not going that far. I'm just going to take these. We're going to go into the blue room. We're going to dump them into my tray, and we'll get a little B-roll footage of what that tray looks like up on the screen, so you can kind of see what they look like in this new test environment. Okay, so welcome back. Apparently I forgot to hit the record button. I poured my sand back in this tank really slowly, kind of in the spot where I scooped it up out of. The flow will get in here, the snails will move stuff around, the pleckles will move stuff around. Not too worried about that. Ultimately, I hope you learned a little bit about live foods. We really enjoy feeding the live blackworms here in the fishbowl. They're super protein dense. They're really good for your fish. They're not going to foul your tank. Everybody's going to eat it. If you've got a picky eater, these are going to be something that you'll want to try out, because I almost promise you that your fish will eat them. If not, they're going to grow in your tank and you'll be able to feed somebody else with it. Ultimately, I'm really happy with how lucky I got with my blackworms taking off in here, because it's kind of helped me learn a little bit and watch them grow and give me a good idea of how much I can feed and not put a dent into my supply, basically. So, with that in mind, I've got that new experiment going. We're hoping to hit a home run with that. I've got a really good feeling about it, because I've got it set up just like the way these tanks work, just on a much smaller scale dedicated to them. Ultimately, we're going to have live blackworm starter cultures up on the website soon, so look forward to that. If you have any questions, you want to know more about what other live foods you've got, leave those down in the comment. Thanks for hanging out, Scallywags. Have a good evening.